Hello, everybody. I am nahshondion. I am a teaching artist and a creative nonfiction writer, and we are celebrating Black History Month. I've been doing a series of interviews for my YouTube channel, and today I have with me Celeste Smith. She is a cultural leader with a finger on the pulse of race, culture, and social discourse. She works to advance racial justice, center the voices of people and communities most impacted by racism, and respond to critical community issues. Celeste, thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Last fall, I invited your husband, the acclaimed artist and activist Jasiri X, to participate in an artist grants panel, and you responded. He was unavailable and you participated instead. A week later, you contacted me to offer positive feedback. We had a Zoom meeting and we chatted briefly about the grants panel and our childhood upbringings. I've read several of your interviews and podcasts. I like how you're very blunt and candid with your dialogue. You curse in job interviews and show up wherever you are, the nerve. So you grew up in Chicago, the South Side 100s, and went to school in Hyde Park. You can't watching your mom bake and choose home decor among your early experiences of the arts. Not only are you a writer, artist, photographer, filmmaker, fashion blogger, and stylist, you come from a family of writers. Your grandmother was a writer, your mom and two of her sisters. One is a published novelist. You started working as a shampoo girl at the age 12, worked in an ice cream store in high school, and ended up taking the civil service exam. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and we thought the world was going to end. So I figured I would just learn to type. As a child, did your family celebrate Black History Month?
No. That's, I was thinking about it every time Black History Month rolls around, because it's very important in our family, now, like it's Black history all the time, right? Every day. But as a child growing up, I think there was a desire to almost erase the differences. So when Black History Month came up, there wasn't a thought about making sure that we had a emphasis on race. So the answer is like no, not at all.
So are you saying that there was no discussion about race? There was no.
Not explicitly, no. They more so, when you look at the fact that, in terms of how it's going to be, that was more of the dichotomy. Was more of a conversation in my household, more so than, specifically Black history. Not that we didn't identify as Black, because, we knew we was Black. You can't be Black in Chicago and not know you Black, right? Particularly where I grew up at, like that's all, we was blackity black and the wild hunts. But it just it wasn't really about being Black. It was about the Bible. It was about, this world that's coming and that piece.
Mm-hmm. Why is it important for African Americans to celebrate Black history year long and not just in the shortest month of the year?
I think it's important because if you don't know yourself, then, you can't achieve the things that you want to achieve. I think in celebrating Black history, we celebrate ourselves ultimately. And so a lot of the things where, we live in a society that doesn't celebrate Black people at all. Right. And so when you're celebrating certain facets of Black history and you realize, man, a Black person invented that, or that person was Black, or, these things that you learn, it actually impacts, I believe, your self-esteem. And then I'm a big fan of representation in the arts, because you're seeing it now play across social media with little girls in Encanto, right? They see themselves as the main character. The movie that Disney just put out, Encanto.
Yes.
Right? You see it on social media, little girls dancing with it and seeing themselves, right? Or in Spirit, Soul, rather. The other, when the guy, he was literally a Black man for 2 seconds, but he was a Black man on screen, right? When we saw ourselves in Tiana before she was a frog for 3 seconds, we were celebrating that 3 seconds only, right? So it's whenever we see ourselves, whether it be in history, whether it be on film, whether it be in a person that has a position of power or authority in this world that we want to see, it makes us feel and believe we can. So when you think about the Obama presidency, some of the stuff Barack did, people find problematic. Some people say it was the best president ever, right? But whatever you say about him, you cannot take away from us seeing our Auntie Michelle up in the White House with our cousins, Malia and Sasha up in there, right? It's just a part of like being Black and seeing Black and knowing what we have done, what we have overcome and what we have accomplished, that that lets us know that despite what we're dealing with in this world and this society today, we're going to get to where we need to be.
You know, I always think about what some of our ancestors and what slaves endured. And, you know, although we are still experiencing acts of hatred and discrimination and racism and violence, tremendous amount of violence towards us that is state sanctioned, we still are not experiencing the level of torture and horror that our ancestors experienced. And so I often think of, you know, if they were able to endure what they endured, and I can only, no, I can't imagine the psychological effects of how they felt on a daily basis. And I was telling a friend the other day that well, not a friend, but I was telling someone, I said, if I were a slave, I would have killed dozens of white people and I would have killed dozens of their children. There's just no way that I would have accepted that as my life. I would have ended it for others and I would have ended it for myself in the long run. There's just no way that I would accept that. And I say that unapologetically. But I also say that to say, we're not, although we are still experiencing, how would I say that, not the fallout, we're still experiencing similar acts of what they experienced. But again, if they were able to endure that, you know, we should be able to, you know, we should be able to make it through as well.
No, I hear what you're saying. And it's a different time too, like because of how we were raised, what we've endured in our lifetime and the type of place that we live in, we can absolutely say that if you transported me right, Celeste 2022 back to the 1700s, I absolutely would be taking some skulls, right? And because
Right.
of having been what we've been through. But I do think you're right. And it's like, it's not even the impacts of slavery, but it's also even things like childbirth. I think about, I had 3 kids and how medicine has changed so dramatically. And even though Black women still have a high mortality rate for both themselves and their children in childbirth, prior to there, it was just a different game completely. And so I look at like what they were able to do for us to get here, whether it be in slavery or before, where the medicine was different and the assistance was different and doulas showed up different from what they had. And we've accomplished and been through so much. It's beautiful to see that we are here and striving and thriving.
And you know, this wasn't in the questions, but I want to talk about it later. I know you did something several years ago with births or baby showers. There was a GoFundMe fundraiser or something.
It wasn't mine, but they did a baby shower and it was connected with Beyonce. And it was something that we just supported in terms of community. And I love the idea because there's so many of, Pittsburgh has a high preponderance, Pittsburgh is where I'm based, has a high preponderance of Black single moms. And so to have a baby shower, really at any time, real talk, but to have a baby shower where you're helping young Black women to be able to take care of their children by community is a blessing. So although it wasn't led by me, I was just in support of it.
And I think, you know, how do I say this? So much of what has happened to us, it's very much get over it. You know, my family hasn't benefited from slavery because, you know, there's a lot of talk about reparations. And a lot of people are very dismissive of what has happened to African Americans and Africans historically in this country. And no one wants to hear our complaints. No one wants to hear our grievances. The majority of people I read a great deal, they're not in favor of reparations for us, for African Americans. And so, you know, when you're often around white people, Caucasians, I wouldn't say so much that it's like walking on eggshells. They're very dismissive of Black people. I mean, they're dismissive of each other as well. But I think Black people have to get to what is the word called? A place where they're comfortable with making white people uncomfortable. Our life here for the past 400 or 500 years has been nothing but uncomfortable. So, I mean, when I wake up on a daily basis and when I go out of my home, I don't do what I do for anybody's comfort. Everything I do is for my comfort. And that's why I keep a good distance from people, Black, white, Asian, gay, straight, trans, from everybody, because you go through life, and it's not selfish, but you go through, this makes me uncomfortable. This makes me uncomfortable. I didn't know we had some kind of contract as we were born into this world based on your comfort. And it's so ridiculous that we have this council culture, and you have to walk on eggshells. You can't say this. You did it. I'm like, what kind of world is this where you can't?
No, I'm not a big fan of cancel culture either, but I am a big fan of dialogue. And I feel like if you got questions, then let's talk. Let's chop it up. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not a big fan of all the DEI stuff that's going on right now, because I be feeling like that becomes emotional labor for people. But I am a big proponent of conversation. It's not the end all be all to solve all of this shit, but it is a good start to beginning to parse it.
And so, because I went off on a little tangent, and I went off on a tangent, so I'm sorry. But I want to say, how is your community celebrating? Well, you said every day. How is your community celebrating Black History Month?
It's happening. Some stuff is in person, and some stuff is like online still, because we still out here in these COVID streets, right? So, a lot of times, particularly art institutions got hit hard by COVID. Couldn't see people in person, as like it's happening everywhere. So people are starting to trickle back in, but the gatherings are so much more intimate and so much more smaller than they had been. But you're seeing stuff, happen throughout Black History Month, left and right. I mean, I think too, like social media does a great job of uplifting it, because so many of us are always on our phones, right? And so you're seeing people uplift different Black businesses and Black artists, and iconic people from our history, just left and right, are being elevated during this time. So in my community, not just in Pittsburgh, but I look at my community being universal, international. I haven't talked to any aliens lately, but whatever, people on the other side, I said my community is universal, like maybe on the ancestors on the other side, however we celebrating it. But it's happening on various levels, and it's very loud, you know what I mean? So I don't think that we're whispering about, who we are, what we want any longer. I think, when George Floyd was murdered and the uprising became amplified in our, in a situation where we were all on lockdown because of COVID, it put us front and center, and it wasn't February, right? And so since then, we have been talking about, yes, Black Lives Matter, right? We have been talking about our contribution, and we've been put, front and center.
Justin Lang is a former program officer at the Heinz Endowments. He's now a principal consultant at Hilombo. He informed Jasiri about grants about a decade ago. The typing skills you learned in your youth later paid off when you started writing grant applications for Jasiri. If we don't receive support or encouragement, we're still artists, you said, just not the ones that have been strongly supported. Tell us about One Hood Media Academy. How was it created? What is the mission and your role?
One Hood Media Academy, it's interesting, the evolution of it. So One Hood is actually where it starts. And One Hood starts back in 2006, when a group of men came together to protect the Black family from violence without and violence within the community. So there was a rash of shootings in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and the brothers came together to walk the community and make sure that we were protected. But then there was also a situation when police put the gun in the face of a young woman and her 2 children. And we were by her side, at those court cases and fighting because they tried to put charges on her. One Hood Media Academy started as an after-school program, real talk. Like it was, a report done by Pew and the Heinz Endowments that talked about how 96% of the time you see Black men and boys in media, it's in sports, entertainment. And so the One Hood Media was really a media literacy program, but it was always at the center of arts and activism. So when we would we would do performances, and you've been in a rally or protest lately, there's always an element of art there, whether it's public art or performance art or whatever, right? There's always that piece there. So we were always that part, but we were also part of the protest as well, because we are artists and activists. So when you see One Hood now, we really, really blew up around that time in 2020, because again, the amplification of the uprising, and we had already built trust in the community because we had been doing this work since 2006. And so the iteration you see now has a much more broader, vantage than it did. We used to be primarily arts when I was running the organization, but with the amplification of the uprising, it was more protest, there was more outrage, there was more discussion, right? And so we began to be integral in that piece. And so right now you see we had the first Black mayor in Pittsburgh elected. And, we were very integral in uplifting, his platforms and the things he was talking about. And I think that like it's something that we celebrate, because we Pittsburgh never had a Black mayor. Like this is the first one, right? And just for us to be able to celebrate it. Am I freezing up again, girl?
No, I didn't know this is Pittsburgh's first Black mayor.
Yeah. And then look, and it was so like what's also so amazing about it. 2019, there's a report that comes out that says Pittsburgh is the worst place for Black women to live. Right. And so anything like if I move outside of Pittsburgh for like, anywhere, my life expectancy is dramatically increased, right? Just because I moved. Right. And so to have somebody that, cares about me as a Black woman, that is married to a Black woman, it's super exciting, to be a Black woman in this city. Even more, if I couldn't be more excited if it was a Black woman, but we have somebody in that seat that's helping us, move forward. And it's something that we as an organization help him to get to that place. And so, my role in One Hood now, I'm no longer the executive director. I'm just, I'm the co-founder, not just, I'm a co-founder. And I'm also, helping to do, in Pulp Fiction, do you ever see the movie Pulp Fiction, and they call in the wolf when something needs to be done? I'm not cleaning up dead bodies, but I'm helping wherever, anybody needs some help, because having run it, I have a institutional knowledge, having been around since its inception, I have institutional knowledge. So some of the stuff I'm doing now is financing. Some of the things I do around programming, development, that kind of thing, artist development and stuff like that. But it's funny is that when I started working at the foundation, I thought that I couldn't be actively engaged anymore because I had the job of program officer. But I sat, I had to sit with myself and understand I don't have to give up something I co-created, no matter where I work. And, right now I'm also the board chair of the organization. And so I wear a bunch of different hats. I want to put some of those bags down and wear fewer hats.
Stop being a bag lady.
Yes, and you're gonna hurt your back.
It's true. So the mission.
Yeah, building liberated communities through arts, education, and activism.
Gotcha. And oppressed communities.
That's like, you don't need to build liberation if there's no oppression. So yes. Yeah.
So had Justin not informed Jasiri about grants, do you feel that he and One Hood Media would be where it's at today or as successful?
I do. I have to sit with that question. I know, like, I really am a firm believer, and I tell grantees this to this day. If you're supposed to get it, you're going to get what you're supposed to get. Yeah, I mean, and so like a lot of the money that we get outside of One Hood, the 501c3, it comes from speaking engagements, it comes from moderating panels, it comes from performances, it comes from community conference. It's all of these other different things that generate income. I think it's about if you're doing what you're here to do, that brings the success. I think that having the financial backing absolutely expedites it. And I think that's because we're supposed to get it. I know that sounds like very glib, but I really do believe that. I feel like because Jasiri had a level of success before Justin approached him. The thing about philanthropy is they don't approach you if you're not doing shit. So if you're doing something, you know what I'm saying? Like people gonna approach you and they will help augment what you do. Yes. But anybody who has ever gotten a grant knows that it's not enough to do what it is that we actually put in. Because it's just not enough money. Rich people are only giving out, a certain amount of that money whatever they can write off on taxes, right? They're gonna keep this cool zillion over here, but you can have
Oh, no
this
doubt.
100,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
So you feel
And
a few
so,
dollars, a few pennies.
yeah, so and
The
you
bread.
a grantee, you know that.
Yeah. So I was surprised that One Hood didn't have any biographies listed for the staff. And you explained to me the need to deconstruct hierarchical structures. Can you elaborate on that? And how
Yeah,
does that work for the benefit of all of your staff?
I don't know that we don't have bios because of the hierarchical thing. I know that's why I did it when, before, in a way, because I really do believe it takes everybody to move things forward. But what I realized, even when I was running One Hood, everybody is not a leader. Everybody doesn't consider themselves a leader. Some people are very comfortable with you telling them what to do and how to do it. You know what I mean? So you can't have a hierarchical, like a non-hierarchical structure if you don't have people that don't come in with that mindset. When you have people that are waiting for instruction, you can't have that. The team we have now, though, like they and run with it. But we also perform, like our work is like a Swiss Army knife. So like you might be the director of policy and advocacy, but you might need to, spit a poem. Right. And so like, we talk about the different things that people do, things that people have titles for, but honestly, it's not about disruption of hierarchical structures when you look at how it is. Now, for me, I feel like, if we're working together and your job is to handle artist engagement, right? You go handle that artist engagement, and then because we're all bringing together our different places to bring the whole. So like the head is probably the most important part of my body, because you decapitate me, I can't do everything. So let me say your other hand, right? So if this hand and that leg and that leg, right, it all works together.
Right,
And so
right.
for me, like I feel like a lot of times when you're doing work, particularly in artist community, it's everybody coming together to do the work. Um, there's an organization here in Pittsburgh called the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, and the executive director is Joseph Hall. And he's trying that right now, where he's trying to eliminate that because you do your part, I do my part, this all works. But if you don't do your part, that's when hierarchical structure becomes to come back. Because now I got to do your part and my part.
More
Right?
bags.
Yeah. So I think it's a theory that needs to still be tested, but it does not work if you don't have people who are self-starters and feel and know that this is their work to do.
Okay. And yeah, I'm familiar with the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, and he's from the Bronx. I forgot his name.
Yeah, well, he worked out there for a while, but he was in Pittsburgh before he went back out to.
Right, exactly, yes. Really nice gentleman. So I was going to ask you, how has One Hood responded to the social unrest in 2020, the ongoing pandemic and racial terrorism, but you already kind of touched on that earlier.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you, like during that time, like where we get really in the mix, we were like one of the first people to give out N95, was it N95 mask? I don't have me messing up the name. But we became a direct service organization. We started doing Ask a Black Doctor because there was so much misinformation circulating in the Black community that we had to, felt like we wanted to be able to step up and give, people access to doctors, so we can ask those questions directly of people who look like us and who care about us, and we can get those responses. We did a show in tandem with other. Ask a Black Doctor was done in tandem with Gateway Medical Society, and all of the doctors that are on the show there are BIPOC. We did another show called What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know, and that actually has kind of morphed into something different than what it started, because it was about COVID and the uprising and things like that, but also they had politicians on there, they had teachers on there, so all of the things that the Black community we have to deal with. Where we have professionals that look like us and believe in us there to answer the questions. So we've really grown a lot and really found our footing. I have always thought of One Hood as a lifestyle. I never have thought of us as an organization. And to be able to see, and I hear lifestyle is the wrong word to use, because people look at lifestyle like a magazine spread or something like that. But I mean it as in the way you live. You know what I mean? Like you can be one of our board members is a judge, right? You know, you can be, I'm a program officer, right? Jasiri's an MC, right? It depends. We have a lawyer that's part of the staff, right? And so I think like what we were able to do to shift because we're of the community and we made of community members. And so when you have to address the community or respond to the needs of the community, you know, because that's part of who you are.
Okay. So gonna move forward. I think we probably have about 20 minutes left. So I'm not gonna speed through this, but just be mindful of the time with your answering your questions.
Okay.
So
You said I talk too much.
You read between the lines? No, you don't talk. You don't talk enough. No. So on Jasiri, you stated he has crafted a career by immersing himself in his art and being true to his values. I believe Jasiri's example is so important for youth performers of color because he represents a tangible example of what is possible. One Hood tackles how Black men show up in the media. Black men are also responsible for some of their negative images in the media. Do you feel like Black men could do a better job of creating more positive representation of themselves in their communities?
I don't know. I think we all could actually, but I don't blame Black people in particular for the conditions in our community. When you have a community where you have lack of resources, when you have a community where you have food deserts and all of it, like what do you expect people to do?
You said food what?
Deserts. Like when there's no supermarkets and things like that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I never heard that term before. I didn't. Okay. Oh,
no,
wow.
it's like, we have, it's documented that we didn't bring drugs and guns in our community. Like we ain't flying out overseas and bringing shit back, right? And so when you start to talk about and you want and blame on who's responsible for different things, it's people navigating an environment that we're born into. You know what I mean? And so I think that like when we become woke and conscious and we get a better idea of the different things that we're dealing with and we begin to take it personally, we see ourselves as part of our community, right? And you put resources in, whether it's after school programming, whether it's more jobs, things like that, that changes the environment, that changes the community, and that changes how we are representative of our community. But, could we do a better job? I think when you have knowledge, absolutely. You know what I mean? But when you are a manifestation of your circumstance and your environments, this is what happens.
Okay. Yep. So over the past decade, we've seen a tremendous amount of LGBT people in the media. Many of them are Black men, trans women, and transgender people. When I read and hear the complaints, I often laugh because just like you can't force someone to be masculine, you can't force someone to be feminine. And so my question is, what do you say about Black people who constantly complain about Black men seeing more images of feminine Black men in the media and that Black men are being feminized? What do you say about that comment?
I think like, again, it's about education. You know what? Because I think like we have a like one size fits all mentality sometimes. And I remember thinking, I'm like super girly. And I remember thinking like,
I am too.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just, right. And this is who we are, right? And I remember thinking like, people just super girly, right? And then
super girly.
I never like started to compartmentalize people. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I think we get introduced to this idea of what things are supposed to be. And this is it's patriarchy at its root, I think, right? But I think like people have to educate themselves because I'll be thinking about like if you're a religious person and God made pink flowers, right? Just using one thing, right? Because people want to associate pink with femininity, right?
Yeah.
But that the God made that flower pink, right? And that God gives us different octaves of voices and different ways that we like. It's all of these things, and so I think it's really just boils down to a lack of education. And like I said, I used to really think that when I came into the nation, there's a class specifically for Muslim women.
Mhm.
And I used to think like, well, why is it teaching femininity, to Muslim women? Like it really talks about it.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, exactly, oh wow, right? Because I thought that being a feminine woman was just what women were. Didn't even think about their right. Tomboy is a phrase, but I never thought that made you less of a woman. Do you get what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
that my thing, I don't know what I say to people except for like, that you need to educate yourself. That's the
Did,
only thing.
did you pass the course?
Yes, because I told you I'm super girly.
Right.
But like it's not even a pass the course to your point, like, right? This is a lifestyle. And it's like, I check and augment as I go, right? And so I look at it this like for people who have a narrow mindset like that.
Yeah.
This is why like one of my favorite scriptures is like when they bought um the adulterer, the woman who committed adultery to Jesus. And they like, yo, we was looking in the window and we peeped her committing adultery. What you got to say to her? Right. And Jesus, like, I'm just gonna put words in Jesus' mouth, right? Because I feel like I can.
I
But
think
Jesus is like,
creative license is okay.
my little creative license, but Jesus one
Everyone else takes it.
right, where to do that, right? Because they just bring the woman, but whatever. But Jesus kneels down and Jesus is like, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Now, I'm not saying anything is sinful. I'm saying that Jesus was like not judging. And so all these people who talk about that, a lot of times it is based in a judgment and a limited understanding of the divine. And
Mhm.
so when you are educating yourself, not from a patriarchal lens, but from the lens that was given to us by the God himself. And it's hard to get to that because there has been so much remixing done with what we have been given, right? But if you sit there and you actually study even nature, like I said about the flower, right? And you study things like that, then you get an indicator of how God shows up.
That is true. That is very, very true. That is. Um, so I'm going to move on to the next question. In addition to previously running and co-founding One Hood, you are a mother of three and the founder of the Nefertiti Alliance. Can you tell us about the alliance?
Yeah, I'm a co-founder, but
Okay.
it's fun. The Nefertiti Alliance came out way before self-care was on everybody's tongue. And so this really was about the cultural capital of Black women in the arts and recognizing the weight that Black women carry. And so it started with 4 women. It ended up with 3, myself, Stacey Pearl, and Erin Perry. And we each were running Black arts organization. Erin runs Lady Arts, Stacey runs Pro Arts, and I was running One Hood. And what we did a multi-generational approach. So it starts with the 3 of us. And then our first meeting, I brought one person that was younger than me, one that was in our same age group, and one that was older.
Mhm.
And each 3 of us all bought these women together.
Mhm.
And we it started just by brunching. You know what I mean? And so like what we found was different things that each age group was looking for. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you that elders was like excited, right? But it was different for each group and it was special on every front. And then we got a grant and we turned that grant and gave it back out to the community. We did a few things, like we paid for the brunches, we had a few gatherings and things like that.
Mhm.
But some of that money was about going to a retreat to study ourselves. Like, what respite do I need? What spirituality do I need? What healing do I need?
Mhm.
Right. And Stacey and Aaron were there as well. And so when we came back, like I said, we had this blueprint of how we wanted things to roll out. And we were able to put that money right back in the community. So the women who we came into communication with, and we talked with in those sectors, they were able to plan events and put things back out in the world that was all centered on self-care and the creative capital of Black women and our health.
Okay. Okay. You kind of answered some of you kind of went into the some of the other questions that I had for you, but that was perfect. So in the past, you've been hospitalized for physical stress related issues. How do you balance being a queen, a wife, super mom, professional and artist, a student activist, mentor to young women, and a sincere, genuine, loving, and kind human being?
I don't. I'm trying to do better though. I am. I'm trying to do better because I think like it's funny. I just did a
Well, if you don't, you're going to put another planet like those planets behind you.
I started this year a lot better than I normally do, though, for real, for real. Like I didn't have anything on my calendar, and I usually am booked like from the time the sun start to sunset. I'm going, going, going. So I came into this year very dedicated to not being that way.
Mhm.
So the things that I do try to do, I start my day. Usually, I'm the only one in my household that's up somewhere between 5 and 6 prayer time. I get up. Our youngest does usually get up with me. And I remember my mom wishing like I wasn't up in some of the times so she would be up. But that's how I do it. I talk and to the gods. You know what I mean? Like, and that's when I journal and I, go into my own mind at that time. The other part is like for real, not packing my schedule all like that. The other piece I do is I need to go somewhere. Like I love to be in the ocean, to see the ocean, to
Mm.
see water. That's my peace spot. So if I'm able to afford it, you posted a picture the other day of a spot that you go to for peace. It was a park,
Mhm.
right? So we have to find those environments that give us joy, that give us pleasure. But we got to put in ourselves. Like I girl will go shopping and intend on buying myself some, being about everybody else in this house something, but not me, right? And so there's these pieces about being intentional about pouring into yourself, reading things that are important to us. Sometimes when you get into relationships, you're focused and trying to like on the relationship. Like I'm very much that Proverbs 31 chick I talk about all the time, that wife, that capable wife that the Bible talks about. So a lot of times I would be so focused on my husband being good, I'm over here all, needing respite and stuff like that because I'm pouring so much into it and being a mom,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And helping my children navigate. So it's not that you say, fuck all the niggas. No, you don't do that, right? You do, you keep loving, you keep moving, you going that way, but you do not forget yourself. And that's any partnership or relationship you in. It don't matter. If you
No,
don't prioritize yourself,
you'll lose
it's
yourself.
all, period. And I lost myself at least 3 or 4 times. So I do actively practice. I go to therapy every 2 weeks. Used to be every week, but I'm, trying to practice my own, and actually doing the things I learned in therapy. So I go every other week. But
Mhm.
I kid you not, it's really the intentionality that
Mhm.
helps you do it. And I'm not very good at it.
That's true. Okay. Okay. So, what keeps you happy and inspired?
You know what? I think it's I do love my job. Like seeing other artists thrive and
Mhm.
being able to, my job is to give away money. And a good chunk of it is to give away money to people that look like us. So like there's a joy in me, like if I'm able to give you a check to by the grace of God to do what you were born to do. The artist way talks about people like me that are artists, but we live adjacent to artists because we ain't doing
You
our
talking about
own
that
stuff.
book? The book
Yeah,
that I'm familiar with
yeah.
that book. I read it like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yes, right. That's me, right? And so that actually does bring me a lot of joy seeing other artists be able to put beauty into the world. I do like enjoy reading. I enjoy watching stupid shows, like because the work I do with One Hood is very heavy because it's activism, and the
Mhm.
work I do with the foundation is heavy because it's brain work, right?
Right.
And so when you put and One Hood is brain work too, so it's very heavy kind of all the time. So I'll watch some stupid shit in a second. So
Mhm.
that Sharknado or something like that. Just like I just finished watching Snowpiercer. Like it's on HBO, but it's like it's so like what's gonna happen,
Okay.
but it's still entertaining because I don't have to work here to figure it out.
I'll
So,
have to look at it later.
and I'm a foodie. I love to eat. I love food.
Okay.
That's the other thing.
I noticed the food trucks that you posted on the One Hit Media's Instagram. So, um, not going to speed through these questions, but we probably have about, I would assume, maybe 15 minutes or less. In the past, you've hosted an annual 2-day hip hop festival. Since the pandemic started, is that still happening? And if so, how have the results been?
You know what? We haven't been doing the festival since the pandemic started and taking a break from it. I would have to talk to Jasiri to see if we intend to still do it again because things are kind of loosening up and people are doing more stuff outdoors now.
Mhm.
So I have seen other successful in my job festivals that are outdoors. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you see it coming back. But then you never know because we have been doing it like for a minute. It was called One Hood Day.
Okay.
Um, and so, evolution, you never know, things change or it may look different when it comes back. because Pittsburgh be janky with the rain. We have like one day a year where the sun actually shines. So I don't
I'm
know
gonna
if
try to make it. I'm gonna try to make it to your next one when you have it. I'm gonna try
I'll
to.
let you know when it comes up, but to be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in January of 2021, you were named the Senior Program Officer for Arts and Culture at Pittsburgh Foundation. You helped develop the Advancing Black Arts in Pittsburgh toolkit in response to a direct request from the field for examples of grant applications, budgets, curricular vitae, and artist statements for successful funding requests. You also engage arts institutions in critical discussions about their role in creating a thriving and equitable arts ecosystem. You've co-led efforts to document and elevate the impact of COVID-19 on the arts sector, ensuring their inclusion in the criteria for the Emergency Action Fund. You also helped organize a 9-person advisory committee to inform the design of the Grantmaking for Racial Justice Fund. Please explain your foundation's more than money mindset.
So we, a lot of the people who are program officers at the foundation were workers in the field. Like, I used to run my hood. So I know very intimately what it's like to put in applications and be struggling to, make ends meet as an organization. Even the Pittsburgh Foundation's president was a grantee at one time to the foundation. So we are very intimately acquainted with all of the things that people need to navigate. And so the other piece, we know it ain't never enough money. Like I said already early in this conversation, you get a grant, but it's really, you always put in more work than what this grant actually gives. And so we realize that there are some things that we can do in terms of economy of scales that can help people writ large to do what they need to do. So for instance, in the arts, people ask for networking opportunities. And so right now I'm working on something where people want to meet more renowned national artists, some of which I know. People want to meet more accomplished Pittsburgh-based artists, some of which I know. So I'm trying to facilitate through the foundation a way to bring people together so that artists that are, have access to people who they feel are accomplished and have done things that they want to do, right? That's more than money. So you might, as an organization, you might need financial help. So we might, get with a financial institution to come and give a talk on accounting practices that can help somebody running a small arts organization put together things in order to move forward. So it's basically things that you can't afford in your grant application that we are able to, put in place to help more than one person to get, access to the things that they need to be successful.
Okay, so I'm going to skip questions. So how do you help emerging artists realize and see the potential of their work and help them understand their worth so they won't be exploited and underpaid? Do you help them set standards?
I do, and I have a lot of one-on-one conversations. So you know how you said, in the beginning, how I reached out to you with, some for a conversation. A lot of times I'll do that with artists, or artists will hit me up. I'm very accessible. So I haven't changed even my cell phone number since I had this job. It's the same. I'm the same OC. You hit me up, we'll chop it up. I have been, by the grace of God, successful in funding. I got like a 98% grant approval rate, and I give out grants. And so I have a access to a mentality that a lot of people don't. So when I talk to artists, I will give them direct, critique and encouragement. But I also I think it's important for artists to begin to look at themselves as a business, and I share a little stuff like that. Like Beyonce is a whole ass business, right? And it's like, if she looked at herself as Beyonce over here on the side, we wouldn't have Beyonce as we know her.
With some college, right? What is it? With some hot sauce in her bag?
That's right. Like that is still her.
That's
right.
Her.
But she a whole ass business, right? And so a lot of times, because we are in a society that supports our product, but not us as a people. It's just a little bit of a tweak for us to start looking at ourselves as a business as well.
That mindset.
Right? Yeah, and we don't believe in ourselves. And a lot of it, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, so a lot of it comes from how we were raised, all of that stuff, and people not understanding where we're coming from and all that kind of stuff, but it's helping artists to see themselves.
And that was gonna go into well, I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna ask you a question. You stated, don't ask kids what they want to do when they get older. Ask them what they want to do now. And I've never heard anyone phrase that before. And I just thought that was a very powerful statement, because it's just, we tend to live in a culture, in a world where it's always, oh, you know, people talking about the future and stuff. And I'm like, let's talk about today, what I'm doing today. Like, stop trying to make me wait. Stop, like, those other people are not waiting, you know, and the red carpet's rolled out for them, you know. So yeah, let's talk about now. Put the focus and the emphasis on now.
I think some of that came from coming through the nation, right? Because like in the theology, it's about how heaven and earth are states of mind. And so it's like, you know, looking at what we're dealing with now, right? Because if we taught to get everything when you die, you got to get to heaven to get all of the hookup. Like, nah, right? And so when you look at it as like, what am I going to do now? Our people was getting and still are dealing with racism right now, right? And so when you got to pay your bills, I need to be able to pay my bills right now, right? And so as a child, if you begin to nurture a child in that way, you know, if you look back in the Bible, Jesus was kicking it in the temple when Jesus was a child, because Jesus's mama knew that Jesus had work to do, right? I know my children got work to do, right? And so as we talk to them now,
What's that
like,
song? Everybody must work.
right. And I'm like, I'm about rest. Like, don't get twisted. I'm not like, even though I started as a shampoo girl at 12, like, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to make everybody, I do, you know, you got to do this work right now, right? But it is like,
Did you say anime?
right. No, I did not.
Oh.
That was a very anime-like thing I did, but no, I was not saying anime.
Oh.
But I think like, I do believe that honestly, because kids, like, they be knowing, you know what I mean? Think about like, you know, my son, the one whose background I stole, he can tell
He
you
didn't
all
make that,
about,
did he?
he so it's stickers, but he told me, no, mama, Jupiter don't go there, it goes here, right? And the sun go over there. Like, he told me where to put things and put them up and remove them, right? Because he's a genius and he studies and he knows about black holes and worms and all that stuff. But he also can tell you about the number of bones in the body. So this child is a doctor, scientist, or something already. My daughter, or our daughter, Jana, is hella talented. She'll be rapping and singing and doing theatrical productions. She'll probably bust in here and do one right now, right? But she already knows, even though she hasn't maybe verbalized it, the baby hasn't verbalized it yet, the oldest hasn't verbalized it yet, but that by their way of being, we already know and they know. So why not, instead of a parent, encourage them towards that, as opposed to trying to suppress it?
Right, exactly. So do you think there's a significant number of African Americans who don't see or recognize their beauty or worth? And I'm not referencing their financial worth.
I think so. I mean, we live in a society where if you Google beauty, you don't see us, right? And we're so far removed from seeing ourselves that even though we see a whole bunch of white women striving to look and be like us, we don't even look like that as a cosign for us, right? And then we put our worth and our value a lot of times in how other people interact with us or what they deem as beautiful. So yes, I absolutely think that we don't see. And then it's also how we're translating beauty, right? It could be a physical beauty. It could be how you move in your heart and your mind and how you have a service to people and how you inspire and uplift. But I don't think that we take enough time to really look at who we are as people and what we've brought and what we've done. And to
Outside
really
the prism of others in the country and the world. So Black women live in a society that demeans them constantly and often deal with misogyny. Overall, how can the community uplift Black women?
I think it's when we realize that we're living in a society you just described.
Who's responsible for that? Would you say it's the males, the females, or is it both? Or I mean, not the place.
We live in a system of white supremacy, patriarchy, right? But Bell Hooks told us, like, this is the system that we live in: capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, right? And so it's set up to be like that. I don't think anything is accidental, right? And so when you live in a system in a society like that, it sets us up to demean who, you know, it sets it, you know, and it's when you, even if you think about like when we go to school, like who's uplifting the school? White men, right? And so in slavery,
they're always taught that they're the heroes, they're the owners, they're the ones making the decisions. It's just,
Yeah, it's the world we live in. So if people like, us to see that that's the system that we live in, right? That's part of it. We got to do our work to uplift it,
And
right?
it's a very tired. I can't emphasize how tired it is.
Hmm. But
It's
it's not just our job. I think it's in the way of being,
mhm.
right? And so I don't have to think twice as about like whether or not I'm going to bring somebody to a board meeting that wasn't invited. I just am. I don't have, so when I'm in spaces
Mhm.
that we don't always have access to,
Correct.
I very rarely show up alone,
Oh,
right? When I had a speaking engagement at Carnegie Mellon University that was for me. I bought 3 performers and 3 other speakers with me so
mm,
that they could first person talk about what it is that they have navigated,
mhm, mhm.
whether it be a Black woman in activism, whether it be a Black trans woman, whether it be a youth activist, like different ways of being, right? And so when you have an opportunity or a platform, you do it. You had me on a panel, and you could have taught that panel yourself and did a webinar. But instead, you shared that platform with all these other people to come and speak about their success in grant writing or what they know. And it's the same thing. When we're trying to deconstruct tropes, the best way to deconstruct, I'm gonna show you back and tell you, right? And so it's an active piece of it, but it's also a piece of like,
I believe collectively we bring more, we bring our experiences, our lives, our cultures collectively. I mean, and we're all a part of the community. So our voices and our stories and experiences need to be heard and
period.
shared.
Hmm. Period. And a part of me is like, I'm gonna live, right? I'm actually not concerned about you seeing me sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not. And I understand, like, because I think we're capable of building our own,
Mhm.
period, right? Our own organizations, institutions, whatever it is,
And it's
our way
not
of
to
life.
not to, and it's no one's responsibility to make you feel beautiful or good about yourself, or and it's no one's responsibility to uplift you either. Um, but when given the history of this country and historically, with how Black women have been treated, not just Black women, Black people, African Americans, and I
No,
guess even
period. We help one another, but there is a part where there's an impetus on us as person, right? And when like I said, I go to therapy every other week, and I nurture and I talk about these things, right, that make me feel less than, right? But at the end of the day, our own happiness and our own joy and how we show up, it really falls back on us,
mhm,
right? Even if you had some fuckery with your parents back in the day,
it does.
like there is some blame there. But at some point, I had to be like, you know what, I'm I'm not going to let this continue, right? And so, you know, we we do the things that we need to do personally to edify, to heal. But I also do think it's incumbent upon community, right, to come around, right? And when you have a healthy child receives love and encouragement and
Mhm,
uplifting.
mhm.
So, when you put those things together, you get there. But a lot of it comes back to us.
I forget the person whose song, but it's I think it was Aaliyah. Pick yourself up and try again, or dust yourself off and try again. Was that Aaliyah?
Yeah. Hmm.
People are going to throw shit, they're going to talk shit, they're going to do all kinds of stuff. And I've experienced a tremendous amount of that myself, and I still have dusted myself off and have still went about my business and handled my business very well, and you know, used my own strength, to carry on and to do what I needed to do. And the feeling that comes from that alone is it's just like a natural high. It's not a
Hmm.
natural high all the time. I wish it was, but it's a very good feeling. It's a very good feeling.
But
So
you did the work to get there though, right? And it's like it doesn't you don't always have the strength to dust yourself off and try again, right? So
no.
I think like it is that part of doing the work to get there, but also feeling support in whatever community that you find
Mhm.
in different ways.
And you've been an advocate and supporter of the trans community. Well, you're an advocate and supporter for the trans community. How long have you been an ally? And what does inclusivity look like to you?
I don't think I can pinpoint it, but I will tell you the first time that it dawned on me that the community needed support, and I understood. You know how like you move through life and you meet people, and I know, you know, like I have always been accepting of whoever, and whatever because of my lived experience.
Okay.
Um, but when I one time I went to the Allied Media Conference, this had to be around 2014, and there was a trans Latina sister talking about her experience when she would go back home, and her father would call her by the name she was born with, just like not giving no love, like just real, just shitty. And so when she was talking about her experience, it hit me in the heart because of my experience with my own parents. Right. And so this abandonment, this not being accepted. And she was crying. I can't remember her name for the life of me.
Oh, wow.
Um,
You said she
but
was an artist?
mhm.
What kind of art do you remember?
I don't remember what kind of art. I just remember it was Allied Media Conference in Detroit. And I went to this particular workshop and she was telling her story.
Okay.
And just that part, I felt a more intimate connection with her. And then, like, you know, when you begin to talk to more people who are part of the trans community, you learn things like the life expectancy, particularly of a Black trans woman. It was 34, but I hear it's like 31 now. You know, and it's a real, like, it's a real thing when you know what I mean? Like, and so you know that people need allies. And then it's also the part of like understanding that we all need help navigating who we are. So a lot of times
As humans,
people who
even
have
the men. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm saying people who fight against their identities, right? Because we live in a society that doesn't entertain alternate identities. We're getting better, but it's still, particularly not in the Black community, it's not openly acceptable all the time, right?
Oh,
And
no,
so,
it's still very much, what
yeah,
is that?
yeah,
That a man or a woman? What the fuck? Oh, that's a nigga. I mean, I could go down the list of things that I'm not going to because that would take up that's a whole nother show.
but it's
I
real.
can laugh at it, but that's a whole nother show.
But connecting to that pain is really when I was like, it made me really think about it. You know what I mean? And then like the whole part of understanding different things. I was at the Women's March, the first one, and we were behind the stage. I don't even know if I told you this, but we were behind the scenes, and Janet Mock was back there, and she was watching me be a mother behind the scenes, and she asked me about, you know, what it would be like and how do I navigate it with all the responsibilities. And I just remember, again, it's these levels of different things where you touch me, right? Because I wish I had thought and known Jasiri's trajectory, because a lot I just wasn't familiar with. And so a lot blindsided me raising children while my husband was so busy. In Janet Mock's case, should she decide to become a mom, she's a star, right? And so thinking through what it's like to be a partner of somebody that is a star, but also telling her when you become a mom, it becomes a political statement because she's part of the trans community, right? And so, like, you know, just having these moments where I'm actually able to talk to different people in the trans community. The young sister Amaris was you know, part of the community as a male before accepting her identity as a trans woman, and just, you know, telling me about what she went through before she got to the place where she can just be herself, right? And so if we're not having these conversations with people where we're having understanding of trying to you know, actually connect as humans, I think it's harder. So I can't pinpoint a time. I can just pinpoint, because I'm like, I've always been accepting. That's not a thing. But I can't pinpoint a time like when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be a trans ally. Like it just it didn't happen like that.
Right. Okay. So I want to ask you this next question. Why is it important to acknowledge and accept people from various diverse backgrounds?
You know, because we all are part of the solution. And you know, I think that's the simplest answer I can give. I feel like, you know, at the when I look at the arts community, it's a mosaic, right? And I look at the slate of grantees that we just supported through Exposure, the individual artist program that just launched, and the first grantees were awarded this year. And I look at the different things that they're tackling, because America is a mess. This world is a mess. So how do we actively begin to really fix stuff, right? And it's like, the people who are experiencing the injustices are the best people to address it, right? So I can empathize with being a trans woman all day long, but I ain't a trans woman, period, right? And so it's like, and the things that you have navigated to get to who you are.
Disclaimer.
Is that what it is?
And I'm not a trans woman either.
Really, like, look, but that's literally like I can't speak, right? I can empathize, I can say you should talk to, I can do, but right. So the band-aids, being a Black woman, I got you all day, right? Being a XJ Dub, I got you all day. We can talk about that, right? Latinas, they can talk about what they experience and vice versa. So I believe like collectively, we become this community that can begin to heal the wounds of this country.
Mhm.
But until then, until we really all are at the table, then we don't move forward.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes, so want to kind of speed through these questions. Do you feel like the African-American religious institutions are out of touch with the various communities' needs, or do you feel as if they're doing as much as possible to affect positive change in the communities they serve?
I wouldn't say out of touch. I think responsive sometimes, yes. Sometimes out of touch, yeah. But I think I can't answer a blanket statement for all of them. I want to say, like when we had the uprising Amplify here in Pittsburgh, and a lot of the uprisings and rallies were youth led here. Well, you know what I'm saying? And so I remember us going out one night. This is when a verdict came down and exonerated one of the officers in the Antoine Rose, a young brother that was shot 3 times in the back here. And when they let that officer off and everybody took to the streets, there were pastors who opened their doors. You know what I mean? I think that their voices are missing sometimes from the dialogue.
Mhm.
I feel like if Jesus was out there flipping tables because of shenanigans, the least you could do is flip a table. You know what I mean? But a lot of times we are found silent. And so sometimes, and then the ones of us who are, who are speaking out sometimes get maligned in media, right? And so I look at, I wish that we were more vocal, because I believe that when you look in these books and then you look at these revelations, that you'll find a lot of our solutions, right? And you'll find prophets always being on the front line speaking up, no matter if you thought that was crazy. Noah building an ark for 100 million years ain't no rain, like just out there looking crazy as I'll get out. But the solution was with him, right? And so if we are truly ordained as ministers of this word, no matter what religious ideology you come from, it is your duty as an individual ordained. Jonah, you got to go to Nineveh. And right now, Nineveh is speaking to these social justice issues.
Mhm.
And so that, to me, I wish that you did see more people on the front line.
Okay. Do you feel the African American community addresses mental health issues effectively, or do you think there could be more done?
It absolutely could be more done, because the suicide rates, the depression rates, everything is like crazy. And a lot of times we don't want to even acknowledge that mental health is a real thing, like for real, right? And so we have to understand that this is real and manifests in different ways,
Mhm.
and be more about like putting people where they need to be. Pastors, unless that you don't really know how to nurture. You can speak to the spirit, but you don't know what medications to prescribe. And
No.
sometimes people need
Compassion is not, there's no prescription for compassion.
no,
No
right?
prescription needed.
Right, you can do your job as a pastor, as part of the community, as somebody's friend, you can listen, right? But sometimes you need professional help.
That is
When
true.
I found myself depressed one day, and I couldn't get out the bed for 3 days, and I was just I needed something more than somebody tell me they love me,
Mhm.
right? I needed to go talk to somebody, and I feel like we have to embrace that sometimes we don't have the answers,
No,
and
we don't.
sometimes we don't know.
And unfortunately, sometimes those doctors and professionals don't have the answers either.
No.
I've dealt with depression for over 20 years, not every day or every month or every week, but I have cycles of depression from an assault that I endured when I was 19. So I'm able to cope with it. I found my ways to cope with it. You know, it comes, leaves, you know, it could be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks or whatever. But I myself personally did not find that drugs helped alleviate the pain and the mental health. I didn't work.
And yours probably wasn't chemical. I'm not saying that it's all about drugs either. Because right, there's psychiatrists, there's psychologists, there's the therapist. It's like there's different things. And even like, you know, sometimes I talk to young people and it's like, it's not one size fits all.
No.
Right. I've had therapists where I had to side eye and leave because I wasn't the person I was supposed to talk to. Right. And so, you know, but I do think like it's not in somebody's mind. Depression is.
I had a therapist I used to go and see. This was like 20 something years ago in Los Angeles, and it was in a Pico and Robertson area, which is a Jewish community. And the lady, we would meet in her garage, which served as her office. And I don't know if it was me telling her some of my stories or whatever, but you know, I'd often glance over at her and she'd be sleeping. And you know, I was, and I put people to sleep before, you know, talking and stuff. But I was like
you my whole ass therapist over here asleep.
But it was okay because, you know, at that time I needed my things documented and it was serving for that purpose and I wasn't paying for it. So, you know, I wasn't like, wake up. But everyone's experience is different. But I just personally find that, you know, someone listening to me or listening to someone else, just encouragement, showing somebody that you care, you know, versus being silent or knowing that someone is in pain or not returning somebody's email, phone call, or text, ignoring people, shunning people, shaming people. And then people wonder why people go out and do these things, why they're jumping off buildings or why they're drinking or just, you know, committing violent acts towards others or whatever.
But you know, you got to also realize too that sometimes the people that we're trying to reach out to got their own shit.
That is true. That is true.
It's a both and so yeah, sometimes it could be as simple as having the people that you love respond to you and care and wrap you in love, and that is absolutely something that can help. You know, when I've been depressed, just knowing somebody cares, I get that 150%. But it's like I think particularly now, like COVID has shown just how fragile we all are, right? And so
yes.
That piece of moving in grace. When we interact with people, and even like the professionals, like you know, so many people like didn't have space even, you know, as therapists, and that's their job because so many people were struggling with depression and, you know, all the different types of, you know, mental illnesses that we're seeing amplified in this time. So I think it's a both and thing. And I think some things need, for me, I didn't have to take medication for mine. Just talking to somebody every so often has been helpful for me. Right. But I do know others in my family that had to take medication to help to be able to cope. And so I think it's like us understanding I am depressed. This is what this is called. Right. And then beginning to address it in the way that's best for us.
A prolonged period of grief or sadness that is not, you know, the norm. Well, I wouldn't say the norm, but speaking real quick, I had someone, my first love, and would always tell them how I felt about life and things that were going on with me, emotional issues and stuff. And and he was Muslim. I couldn't believe it when, you know, he passed away in 2009. And then I was told a year after his death that he had committed suicide. And I was just shocked because he just, you know, the last person that I would have thought, you know, would do that. And, you know, you never know what a person is going through. It doesn't matter what they look like, how much money, car, job, career, none of that matters. And I had just saw my doctor, not the therapist or whatever, but just my doctor. And I was just asking him, you know, how are you doing, you know, dealing with COVID and, you know, patients and all of this stuff. And I don't really remember ever a time of really asking my doctors, you know, how they're doing, you know, but we forget that, you know, nurses and EMTs and fire department and police officers, they're all humans and they're all people first. We all have feelings. And I think in this culture that we live in America, it's all about work, 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 money, 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 capitalism, capitalism. And people are not often treated like people. Even white people are not often treated like people, you know, and it's like, I believe that this is one of the reasons why so many people are snapping. How can we continue to live in this world that doesn't treat people like people, but just continues to treat them like objects.
Yeah.
And you're only good based on the value that the company or whoever can extract from you.
Yeah, that's why I love the nap ministry. Like it's really like online it's called the nap ministry. It's an Instagram page, and it's really a movement, but it's really forcing us to look at like how we're living our lives, right? And it's like it's so much more about that, more than life than earning this money, right? It's how you live in, it's how
Right.
your interaction with the people who are in your, you know, your sphere, your family, your children, your mom, you know, like it's like so much
Community.
and so, yeah, community. So many people feel unloved, right, and uncared about,
And
right?
unseen.
Yeah.
But they really do. At times I'm just like, I don't have words for it. I'm gonna move forward because I know we probably only have like 10 minutes left. I said that like sometime ago.
20 minutes ago.
We got like probably 10 or 15 minutes left, and I want to get through this because this is important, and this is just very important. You said your form of empowerment is doing something that you love by providing a platform so others can see their dopeness and pay it forward by igniting power in people. Do you attribute any of your arts and activism to having grown up as a Jehovah's Witness?
You know, I don't know that if I put it specifically to the religion more so than it is, like I give my mom a lot of credit for what, you know, her, you know, putting me in art classes, taking me to museums, and her, my mom she is truly giving, and she's still with us. I just went and saw her last week.
Mhm.
The way service represents itself in being a witness is going door to door. So certain parts of like I'll never meet a stranger, and public speaking is not terribly difficult for me because of, you know, you'd be talking on this at the hall from 5 years old or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's like right now you're looking at 40 plus years of public speaking. So I don't know that I would attribute it necessarily to that mindset, but
Okay.
I think that it's absolutely part of who I am, because you can't have been raised in something, you know, I can still like throw a scripture from the, you know, memory, 1 Corinthians 15:33, bad association spoils youthful habits, right? So like certain things I just know they're embedded in me because this is how I was raised,
I remember
right?
that one.
Right. So
I definitely would be considered bad associations.
you and me both, girl. You and me both. So that's why, like, I feel like it, but it made us who we are, right? Because there's a piece of empathy having been this fellowship that like I have for people, right? Because
Can I go into this next question?
sure,
Because now you jumping the gun, and I'm the one who usually jumps the gun.
I'm sorry.
I'm the gun jumper. For good reason, I'm the gun jumper. So you were just fellowshipped as a Jehovah's Witness in 1993 at the age of 20. What was that experience like? And do you feel being raised as Jehovah's Witness negatively affected your mental health?
So you know what? I just told my mother this the other day. Like, if you had told me that being disfellowshipped, I would be cut off from like my immediate family. Like, I knew the people at the hall couldn't talk to me. I didn't know my immediate family would cut me off. And so that part of it was like a complete blindside because I had other friends that were this and their parents still interacted with them. So I'm thinking that that's going to happen with me. No. Right. And so like, I do think it affected my mental health because it challenged me. Like I didn't believe in unconditional love until I had my own children. Because what it does is it changes how you view God. Personally, how I viewed God, I can speak for myself. Because if God not messing with me because I did this, and it's not actually how God plays out, right? If you read even the scriptures, Satan be kicking it in heaven still, like he be up there talking mad shit to God, right? And he like, think about it, he was like, yeah, you know that nigga down there, Job? Well, guess what? You got a hedge around him. Like he's in heaven having this conversation, talking crazy to God. And I used to always be like, and I know I ain't no Satan. Right. And so like, but it begins this like piece of thinking that you're not loved by God until you do a certain thing. And your parents, your mom, your dad aren't speaking to you. And if anybody loves this, you know, you think it's your parents, right? And so it began to impact me because it made me feel I wasn't loved or worthy of love.
Right.
And when you feel like, when I felt like that, it did. It messed with me. It tarnishes all relationships, right? Because you become primed for abuse. So you think about like abuse.
A doormat and a doormat.
Yeah. And think about abusive relationships, right? Like they isolate you from your family. Well, you need to isolate me from my family because my family ain't messing with me, right? And so it's these things that that I think impact you in a way that if as baptized as a child, you can't be prepared for. Right. And there are some children that gets disfellowship too. It's very difficult for them.
It is.
I would be very interested in seeing a study done on the number of suicides that are connected, not just with Jehovah's Witnesses, but all organized religions.
And I want to ask you real quick, because we're going to talk about that. How do you? Okay, so let me say this. Years ago, I was shocked to see the number of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and the numbers regarding ones who've committed suicide and the growing ruthless attacks on kingdom halls across the country. So I want you to comment on that, and how do you not fall down a negative self-talk rabbit hole?
So I'm not familiar with the statistics exactly. I know when Facebook first popped off, there were like a lot of XJW support groups.
There still are.
Yeah, and I don't actually engage them in them anymore because
no, it's too much.
Yeah, it's too much, right? And you're trying to heal, and it's like PTSD. You just keep getting exposed to the triggers. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable. Some of their and you talk about like anger and rage, and these white folks are like, I don't think I've ever, I've never really seen white people like express anger at something like that was forced upon them. And sometimes I'm just like, wow. Yeah.
Well, because it's rooted in pain, right? It's rooted
in pain. Right.
So
Not the human, you're right, condition.
And so that's like, for me, it was, I think with a lot of, and this is not specific to being a witness, like a lot of, if you stay in denial, you're going to stay in pain. So you have to get to a point where you accept, this is how I was raised. This is what happened to me, right? And then you have a choice. Because you always go back. My mom and I had this conversation too. And I said, Mom, I'm not a hypocrite. I'm the daughter you raised me to be. And so I don't believe it. So I'm not going to go get reinstated just so I can talk to you. Right? That's just not who I am. But you have a choice, right? You can go back and you don't have to deal with that, right? And you could be inactive is what they call it, right? But I chose not to be. I chose to live in my truth, right?
What's that thing called? Do not return.
Right. Yes. So you know too much. But for real, like it comes to a part where you have to build your own personal relationship with God, however you see the divine being. And you have to understand, like, this is how I was raised. This is what that has helped me tremendously. My mother and my father believe they're doing God's will by not engaging with me on a regular basis. And it has helped me because I'm like, I'm not gonna go head up with God, right? If you feel like that's why you're doing what you're doing, then you go and you be well.
So let me ask you, this leads into the next question. How did you deprogram yourself from years of brainwashing?
I think I'm still doing it though, right? And I'm gonna say, like, it takes time, and I think it's personal study. So when you read, like the part I talk about Satan being up in heaven talking crazy to God, right? So I feel like that helped me.
I love that scenario.
This ain't a spiritual teaching, right? Because show me in the books, pull out the scripture that really talks about that, right? And show me the examples. And so I think like we have to do our own personal study, right? Which they are big fans of.
Oh, aren't they?
Personal study. And so like I said, weekly now, like several times in a week, right? It's a lot. But I really feel like it's like if
and they're waiting for me
right now. So I'm gonna come back. It's a return visit. But now I think that's where the healing comes, is you have to have your own personal relationship with God. And then you also, for me, like there's been times in my life where I get pissed off at God. And
we all do.
Right. But you'd be like trying to act like you don't be, like, at least I used to. I had to admit to myself, I was mad at God. Like, what? Like, who does this, right? But it wasn't ever God, right? And so that's where the healing for me comes, is that's whether you stay with not wholly believe in it, you disfellowshipped like I was, or you disassociate yourself, which Michael Jackson did, right? Whatever your reason is that you part from Jehovah's Witness or any religion, your healing comes from your personal relationship with God, which
Yeah.
nobody can tell you what that is.
Exactly. And that is in the discussion. So briefly, I want you to answer what led you to being what led you to become a Muslim, and what advice would you give to someone seeking to leave the Jehovah's Witness organization but are afraid of shunning and other harmful repercussions?
When I first met my husband, he was inviting me to go to the mosque. And I was like, no. I was like, I got hit my grandma paint. Making up every excuse, because I was like, yeah, I'm good. But we went to eat one day, and he was like opening doors, paying for meals, like super like gentleman, just like I had never met anyone like him. I'm being completely honest. And so he had been asking me to go, and I was like, "Where do they make dudes like this? Let me go check this out." And that's literally how I got by his example, right? The very first time that I went to the mosque, and they broke down what being a Muslim was, and it's about striving to do God's will. I was like, yo, I could strive all day long. I ain't gotta be perfect. Oh, okay, this was that. You know what I mean? And so that's really what got my attention. And so I would keep going to the mosque.
There were no unreasonable expectations, we could say.
No, I feel like, because it was about your relationship with God and striving to submit your will to God's will. Then I had messed up several times trying to do my thing. So I was like, let me try to submit my will to doing God's will, see how this works out for me. Right. But honestly, it was really that. And it was, like I said, I kept going, and I met different people, and it was really that, because having been disfellowshipped and feeling like I failed, like you failed Jehovah's Witness. You know what I mean? Like you failed good daughter. Like it's all of these things that it makes you feel about yourself.
Did you ever go to Bethel? Did you ever visit Bethel?
I have visited Bethel. Yeah, I was in my teens, I believe, when I went to visit. But yes, I have. Right, and it's very much like it's it is a beauty to it. There is a beauty of community, like going to conventions, and
you can't deny that.
No, and again, to your point about how we become who we are, and community embedded, like you had a community, right?
And a peaceful and a loving community at that.
Until you mess up. And even then, it's not that like that the community doesn't still love you. They want you to come back. They want you every look.
They also want you to feel that. They want you to feel that shade.
They want you to feel that shade, right? And it doesn't make sense to me how like you feel like that would make somebody want to come back, but neither here nor there. But yeah, that's how I ended up being a Muslim. It was really that piece of it. Understanding that I could be who I am, and strive towards righteousness.
What advice would you give someone seeking to leave the organization, but they're having issues dealing with the repercussions?
My experience I wasn't given a choice. So it's like if I were given a choice, I think you should be honest with yourself about what you're going to deal with, and then you got to weigh it. Right? Is your freedom to live and be who you want to be important enough for you? Is that what it is about? Right? Because I got a lot of friends that still witnesses, baptized and active, that still talk to me. Right? And they just live life on the side. Right? Like that's my girl, I'm still gonna talk to her. Right? And it is what it is. It's just that's not like, I feel like you're gonna be that I'm not judging them, right? There are people who have chosen that route, right? Do they stuff on the side and then come back and go to the hall and it's good, right? So if you're honest with yourself about what type of parents you have, right? Like I said, I was blindsided. You couldn't have told me my parents was gonna act like this, right? And I would go to my father's house. I went there to check on him last week just to make sure, because COVID, I ain't seen nobody. I had to lay eyes on folks. And my father said, "Hey, Celeste." All right then, Celeste, when I left. That was it, right? And so it's you really have to understand what you're getting into and take time to gird yourself to be able to deal with that.
Mhm.
Right. But if I had a chance to do it all over again, I might not have gotten this fellowship in the way that I did. But I know I probably would not still be there. And I'm grateful for having gone through what I went through, because I wouldn't have the kids I have. I wouldn't be married to who I'm married to. I
Mhm.
wouldn't be in this life that I live if I was still there in that organization.
True. Thank you for those answers. So this is down to the last two questions, because we should be I'm surprised the recording hasn't stopped. What's in store for you and One Hood Media?
I'm excited I'll speak on One Hood first, because Jasiri's at the helm. And so I believe that he is, got the staff and the team that is working with, and you're going to see so much more in terms of, specificity. You know what I mean? Like, so we have a director of policy and advocacy. We have a director of education. We have, artistry. We have teaching artists. We have like this whole, like I said, it's a lifestyle, but it's so many ways that it's going to manifest. We're doing some studies, ethnography studies. We're trying to figure out if we can build curriculum around our approach. And so I'm excited to see it continue to grow. Some of the online programming is going to be in studio programming. As we open back up during COVID, you're going to see more of that. But just about, being unashamed to be Black, unashamed to be activists, and unashamed to be artists is what you're going to see from One Hood.
Okay. Are we gonna be hearing some say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud?
Yes, but probably more updated. But it's like I said, more updated, but that's us. Like, and we are so unapologetic. I had one staff member say, I don't talk to white people before 9:30. You know what I mean? And it's like,
what?
You say he doesn't talk to white people before 9:30. And it's no shade, but it's
sounds like shade to me.
The ability, because it's a Black organization, right? And so our culture is different. Our ways of showing up is different. There's no dress code. There's no, work from home if today is work from home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so there's a way of being that being part of a Black-led arts organization gives you so much flexibility. For me, I think for 2022, I'm challenging myself to speak more. Doing this interview is one of them. Not being afraid of some sound bite or me saying some shenanigans, because I'm always subject to say some crazy shit. I just dropped my website. I haven't launched it yet. I'm still tweaking it here and there, but
what is it?
It's celestesmith.com. And I want you to be able to find me as Celeste. So yes, I'm Jasiri's wife. Yes, yes, I work at the foundation. Also, I'm just Celeste, right? And so how do you find me and connect with me directly? So I'm challenging myself to take more speaking engagements. I just booked one in San Diego.
Virtually?
Yeah, it will be virtually, yeah.
Very convenient, right?
It is. I almost feel about going out there because I want to I love San Diego.
Beautiful.
But I'm gonna chill for a minute because I've been running around a little bit. But yeah, you're just gonna see me actually showing up as Celeste C. Smith, not necessarily connected to an institution or organization, though that's part of who I am. It's not the totality.
Okay. So you are dope as fuck, and you have been flexing for over 2 decades. I strongly believe that more women should be in charge, especially Black queens as yourself. If you were president of the United States, what would you change to impact Black women and women of color and those who identify as female? What would your agenda be?
I'm really concerned about healthcare for Black women writ large. And so like making sure that we have access to quality healthcare, and it just does not matter what field. It's got to be cultural competence, some sort of training, right? Because as a 16-year-old, you have doctors dismissing real problems because they don't believe us, right? And because they have this thought that Black women are basically field animals that can take whatever, right? And so really having people to hear us, but making healthcare accessible and to everybody is a huge thing for me. The other piece is,
I've often read that they're not as quick to prescribe us pain medicine for pain because believe that our pain threshold is higher than theirs, or we can, for whatever reason. I've read that in multiple stories.
No, and it's true. So like that's what healthcare would be my priority, followed by education. Because we, I think about like how student loan debt is crippling so many of us. Because why? Because of the quality of life we want to have,
Mhm.
right? And the pursuit of education and knowledge shouldn't be a cost, right? And so, some of the things we were promised by this administration, if I had an opportunity, I'd like to see them come to fruition because we can do it.
Mhm.
When you read the numbers of money that goes towards, military expenses and things like that, it's astronomical, right? And so, what
It
would
is.
it look like if we provided quality and, and equitable education for all?
Could you see yourself getting
So
involved in politics? City
I,
council, mayor? I mean, down the road? No, yes.
it's so funny. Last year, I posted a picture and it said Celeste 2021, and I got a lot of support for it, and eventually ended up not actually pursuing it, but it was a serious conversation in our household about whether or not I should run for mayor because I had the support of the community.
Mhm.
Um, but ultimately, says like I don't actually think I want to go into politics. I never say never.
Mhm.
Um, but I think I can be of greater service doing the things that I do now than
Mhm.
being beholden to a political office.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, because if you were running for the president, I would have wanted to serve as your Secretary of Defense and Secretary of Treasury. So I guess that's not,
I
I
would
don't
say
make history.
treasury.
Huh?
I would say treasury.
Oh, you would hire me for your Secretary of Treasury?
I would say treasury because we know how to make a dollar out of 15 cents. That's one thing we know how to do.
I have someone that I used to know I would tell him, when I would go places shopping or whatever, and he would just tell me, be like, oh, I can't believe you did that. And like yesterday, I went to Walgreens and I just happened to go in there. I needed another USB drive, and I had $10 in my account towards like a coupon. So I used that, and then the girl at the register gave me an additional $5, and I was surprised. I was like, oh wow. But the USB drive that was like 40 or 50, $40 was on sale for only 20. So my everything I was paying for was going to be about $60. I walked out of there only paying like $11.
See that
I tell
already
you,
sold. So
when I tell you, not so much just even sales, but coupons and promotional things, like you'd be amazed at how much money. And I didn't even know the thing was on sale, but you would just be amazed. It's CVS Care, those extra care coupons and stuff. Those everything.
40% off, like, yeah, be real.
My whole thing is, if I can save $1 or $2 or 1,000 or two, $5,000, $10,000 here or there, then that means that's money for something else. That money is for something else for my, my budget and my production, and for me to keep, sustaining myself or whatever. And so and I don't know when and how I became that way, but it's gotten even more intense now. And it's not so much, oh, I need a refund or, but I have no problem, bringing it to someone's awareness when I've been overcharged. I wouldn't say if I've been undercharged.
Right, that's a whole different thing. Reparations.
That's a whole other story. But which rarely happens. But I'm just I'm very conscious of, the money and the freedom that, not so much being rich. I mean, I'm not rich, but the freedom that comes with having, funds to do what you need to do.
It's funny. It's again a whole nother like conversation, but I agree with you. Working in philanthropy has been that for me. When I was running One Hood, everything is based upon what grants you're going to, right? It's very attached to making sure you do this, do that, right? And then there's you have staff and all this other kind of stuff. And then before the organization with Jasiri's career, he would get, fellowships that were a nice size. And those would help. Like, he got one that was $150,000 over 2 years. And then there was one that was a $50,000 one. And those really help because at least how much money you got to work with. And then everything else is gravy, right? But individual artists, a lot of times, and particularly with COVID, when they was getting cancellations left and right, we lost in the first month of COVID probably like $15,000, right? And so working in philanthropy gave me a freedom that I didn't have for a long time. We weren't struggling, but it was an uncertainty. Now I know every month what's going to hit that bank account, right? And to your point about being able to do things, I work remotely. So, I flew to Chicago last week by the grace of God, to go check on my parents, but I was able to work from there. You know what I mean? But if I got a job where I got to be there, and when kids are getting sent home during COVID because of the, a classmate tested positive, I'm able to stay home and be with my children. Right? I know a lot of women don't have that privilege. You know what I mean? So it has having finances is a huge thing, and that's why we really got to attack these systems, because the disparity in income, and women make like 82 cents on the dollar to men, right? It's like something that as a society we do have to address. But I feel you, like having your own money and be able to do what you need to do for yourself is a blessing.
It's a blessing. I mean, we all have to, well, I wouldn't say answer to somebody, but you just have the freedom to do. I mean, it's being entrepreneurs, running your own business. You make the decisions, and for me, that's just something that I'm used to it, and for 20, almost 20 years now. So I don't know anything differently. This is the life that I've been living. So I was just going to say, since we got into this conversation about finances, money, budgeting towards the end, New York they're taking applications for their Creatives Rebuild New York, and it's a 3-year, $125 million initiative. They're going to provide employment or guaranteed income grants for up to 2,700 artists. I know some of that money is earmarked for actual, I think some of the money is $65,000 to go towards people for jobs that's connected to nonprofits or something like that, artists. And then I know they're going to give some of that money, like $1,000 to individuals for guaranteed income. I don't have the numbers as far as what, but I know that it's those two different, the money that's going to be funneled through to people for jobs, and then the $1,000 guaranteed income. So when I read that, $125 million, that's just 2,700 people. That's great.
No, I agree with that. I think it is great, particularly coming off of COVID, because COVID has changed the landscape, right? So whereas, and like I said, we're still not out of it. And so people are still not, like, for instance, if you do a show where you could sit 100 people, now you can only sit half of that or a third of that. So the amount of money, unless you're going to triple ticket sales, is not the same, right? And so to be able to supplement an income, I know at one where the artists that were affiliated with the organization, we gave stimulus checks, right? We take this money, go live, right? And so I think we have to understand, particularly in a society that is supportive of the artwork, but not the artist, we need to begin to analyze that perspective and begin to support the artists, because the artists are really how most of us are making it through COVID, right? We binge watching, we reading stuff, we dancing outside, we singing from rooftops, and it's particularly when it first started, right?
I got top ramen all in my cupboard and just bought some peanut butter the other day.
It's real.
But right? I got one lobster tail in there too. I'd be lying if I didn't say I had a lobster tail in there. Hey, I got to treat myself.
We got to have something.
But I stole that from Whole Foods.
This is going to be online. Shh.
No, I'm just you how do I say this? I wouldn't say I take things so seriously at times or whatever, but my form of joking or whatever, is I keep it to myself or whatever. But you have to laugh at this. You have to laugh at life, and you have to laugh at your own jokes, because nobody else probably will. But
at yourself.
at yourself. This is just one of my. This is probably my second. This is probably my 100th or. This is a wig, but no, laughter is the best medicine. It is. And when I would have some of my darkest moments, or just because I used to live in West Hollywood, around the corner from the Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, I would be at Chocolate Sunday like every other Sunday, or whatever. But I love comedy, and used to work on the Keenan Ivory Wayans late night talk show with him, and with Keenan. And grew up, watching In Living Color, loved Men on Film, hated it. But I just, in a sense of, I I wouldn't say that I forget, but I know that comedy and laughing has definitely assisted me over the past 2 decades. And, for people out there who are suffering and who are struggling, whether it's, emotionally, financially, you still have to find something to laugh at. We know it's not nice to make fun of other people, but at times,
We all get
if that's what's gonna make you laugh, keep it to yourself and get them giggles out, because that laughter definitely does help. And to see so many people, their faces or their facial expressions, I wouldn't say I'm always looking at people, but I had to learn to read, people at a very young age or whatever for various reasons, and that's been key to my survival and my safety. But I'm just very conscious of, it's like there's still something to laugh at. There's still reasons for us to continue and to go on living and to enjoy ourselves. There are.
I agree with you. I think that humor, and also like gratitude. Like I did think about that. Like even in my darkest times, if I'm able to zero in on, I'm down, and then one of my children come in and give me a hug, right, or send me a text message or something like that. Having that gratitude has been just as much of a medicine for me as
Right.
has been after.
Totally. Yes. So was your daughter gonna was she gonna rap for us, or?
She didn't come in. My oldest son is right here in front of me, though.
Is he a rapper too?
No, my oldest son is an artist. I'm still in this interview. Can y'all get out?
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I told you they's gonna make a guest appearance.
You said what?
My oldest is an artist and a gamer, and John like artist and a performer, like everything. Like it's amazing. It's amazing.
I definitely did not anticipate us, and it's still recording, like, and how, I don't know. I didn't think we were, I'm surprised, like, we got this much time and it is recording. I didn't know how much time I had from you, and I didn't expect for it to go for 2 hours, but this was perfect. And I just want to thank you for showing up and for being yourself and speaking your mind, and all of the positive, good things that you're doing in the community for all of us, and specifically for Black women. Thank you. And, I would like to keep the dialogue going with you at some point. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you for always being so gracious and extending your platform. And the questions that you ask are thought-provoking. They make me think about myself and why I do what I do. And I've seen you, like I said, ask other people those type of questions. So your work is very important, for our community. So thank you.
I grew up watching Oprah Winfrey and a ton of talk shows. And when I was a teen, I knew what I wanted to do, which was to be either a news anchor person or a journalist, or I didn't necessarily think writer or whatever, even though I had did some writing when I was younger and had won an essay for something that I had written. It's just interesting how my life evolved, and I ended up doing what I wanted to do, even though, I'm not with a network or whatever. But I wanted to interview people and communicate and to talk. And, I hosted a public cable access show at one point. And so now here I am on Zoom and YouTube. So it's perfect. I'm doing what I want to do. Pardon me?
Because you knew what you wanted to do. Like we talked about the kids, right? The
Right.
babies going, and you knew back then too. So I wish you further success, and I know your platform's going to grow. And I wish you all the luck in the world, sis.
Thank you very much. So